It is far better to be bold and then have to tweak an ambitious story rather than to write a safe and predictable narrative. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Tara East. I'm a writer, blogger, YouTuber, and the author of the mystery novel Every Time He Dies. And in this week's video, I want to talk about the idea of dangerous writing. So at the end of last year, I read Diane Cook's spectacular speculative novel, The New Wilderness. Now don't worry, this video isn't going to contain any spoilers and it's not a review of this book either. But instead, I want to bounce off a realization I had while reading Cook's novel. So I was about a third of the way into the book when this thing happened that completely took me by surprise. The event made total sense, but it was also dramatic and dangerous. As a reader, I was totally thrilled, but as a writer, I was terrified. The first thing I thought was, I would never have made that decision. Not because it was a bad decision, not for the narrative. In fact, it was a very good decision for the narrative, but I would have been too scared as a writer to make that decision. I would have been too afraid that making that decision would derail the entire novel right off a cliff. But here's the thing, Cook didn't derail the novel. She just upped the stakes. She rode the car off the cliff Thelma and Louise style, only to safely land it on the other side. The story didn't fall apart, it actually just got better. And this made me realize how safe I had been playing it in my current manuscript. I realized that I was making certain decisions regarding the plot that felt controllable and comfortable for me. I wasn't really taking any risks or challenging myself or the story in that particular way. I wasn't pushing the narrative to the edge to see what would happen if. Now, for a quick disclaimer, I do think it is sound advice to not drive your narrative off a cliff, but it's also important that we ensure we're keeping the stakes high in our novels, that we're including plenty of conflict, and that we essentially give our characters hell. Now, why is this so important? Because when we give our characters hell, we're able to see what they're made of. Now, let's be honest. A story about a couple who are trying to frame one another for murder is much more interesting than one about a functional relationship based on respect, love, and mutual autonomy. It is so easy to become attached to our characters. We want them to have a happy ending because we created them, we're attached to them. But we have to ensure that they actually earn that happy ending. We need our characters to encounter legitimately challenging obstacles, whether they be external, like getting stuck in time, or maybe a city slicker who gets enlisted to the army, or they can be internal challenges, like battling mental illness or really intense self-doubt. It is through overcoming or relenting to these obstacles that the character grows. And this is the thing too, characters don't always have to succeed and overcome obstacles. And sometimes it's actually a lot more interesting if they don't. But one thing to keep in mind is that it's not only the characters that should be growing, you as the author should be growing too. Sometimes we keep our stories small because we doubt our ability to pull off a more ambitious version of the novel. And remember, there are multiple ways to tell any story. We need to look at our work more critically and really reflect on whether or not we are developing as a writer. You can ask yourself questions like, where in the plot am I taking it easy? Am I posing a question or a mystery in every single scene that entices the reader? Remember, our brains are hardwired for problem solving. So if you present an issue or a mystery in a scene, however big or small, the reader will want to find out how that gets resolved. Analyze your character arcs. Are they growing and changing over the course of the novel? Are they encountering events that ignite that change? And are you making these obstacles difficult enough? Ask yourself, what is actually at stake here? Also make sure that you double check your use of language and sentence structure. As Roy Peter Clark says, all of us possess a reading vocabulary as big as a lake, but draw from a writing vocabulary as small as a pond. Now, in terms of vocabulary and sentence structure, I feel that this is an issue that many aspiring writers struggle with, but fortunately, I have a few quick remedies for this. Now, in terms of sentence structure, think about using short, sharp sentences during action scenes or moments of high tension. Concentrating your sentences in this way will naturally cause the reader to read quickly, and by speeding up their reading, it will simultaneously increase the sense of pace. Conversely, you can use longer, more lyrical sentences for when you want to stretch out that moment of time, like when you introduce the love interest or when a character is reflecting on a moment from their past. Now, there are 4 types of sentences: simple, compound, complex, and compound complex. Now, don't worry if you've never heard these terms before, because Google has and she's happy to help. Now, if you aren't super confident with your punctuation, things like semicolons, colons, and hyphens, then check out all of the free videos at the Khan Academy. Link below. Now, there is more than one way to write dangerously, and one of the best ways to assess if you are challenging yourself and your characters enough is to simply pay attention to how you feel while you're writing. Feeling nervous, excited, or uncertain, like you're at the edge of your seat, or like you want to cover your eyes, now that's what you're aiming for. A hint of dread may actually be a little bit appropriate, and a sense that everything suddenly just got a little bit wobbly. But how do you know when you've gone too far? If the plot hits a brick wall, if all of a sudden you're avoiding writing, if the story makes no logical sense, if you've broken an established law that you've created in your world, or if all your beta readers come back and say, yeah, that didn't really work. Remember, dangerous writing is worth the risk, and all stories can be fixed. It is far better to be bold and then have to tweak an ambitious story rather than to write a safe and predictable narrative. Here's a handy hint. If you're really struggling to get words on the page, then there's a pretty good chance that you're just not including enough conflict. Conflict is the heart of story. When you have plenty of conflict, then it's quite easy to write because you have something to write about. When the river of your narrative starts to run low, crack open that dam, throw in some salmon, and pray for a rainstorm, because chaos equals action. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Do you feel that you played a little bit safe with your writing? Are there any areas of your craft you feel like you really need to develop or improve upon? Leave a comment below and tell me all about it, because I'd love to know. Now, if you'd like even more writing advice, you can, of course, check out the other videos on this channel or visit taraeast.com. Now, while you're there, be sure to join my email list, link in the description box below, because when you do, I'll send you a free gift, yay, and you'll get a free newsletter in your inbox every single week where I include juicy resources that I've discovered that week, a sweet little newsletter by me with links to that week's blog and video. I hope you're having a great week and that you're getting lots of writing done, because the world actually does need more books. Stay safe, stay calm, and keep writing, and I'll see you again next week.